Hello, in this video I'm going to go over how to add different kind of effects like the stains and splatters, these white kind of effects that are on this kind of table. So whenever I start adding these kind of features, I always want to look at my reference and see how the light is reacting to them. Are they shiny? Are they lighter or darker? Do they have any kind of other features? And I don't use my memory to inform me as much as possible. So I want, because our memories are faulty. So look at reference and do your due diligence. So I found this texture that I'm going to be adding to we're going to be using to affect or add that white kind of stain. So I'll add that to our library. So we just need to go over and hit the plus down here, add resources, and navigate to it. So I added it to it, and then I need to change this to texture. I'll name this like stains, and I'm going to import it to library your assets. I'm going to import, and it should come up here. So in general, I prefer to work in fill layers. So I'm going to add a fill layer, and I'm going to try to get the material close to what is happening in the photos. So I'm going to probably bring down the opacity a bit, maybe try like a different blending mode and see what that looks like. Like screen maybe, or vivid light. Well, no, not vivid light, pin light. Just try out different things. But I think I might just start with normal right now and then bring down the opacity a bit. And then from here, I am going to go down here and bring up the roughness. And I can leave all the rest. So you might notice all the buttons for each one of the parameters. This gives you the option to say, I know for sure this is not going to be using height. So I can click that off, and that takes away that option for this layer. And then same thing for like metal. I'm not going to use that. I know, but in normal, I probably won't use that. I'll mainly use color and roughness. And then let's leave that back up. And then what I'll do here, since this won't affect these other parameters for sure, then I'm going to add a black mask to mask it all out. And then I am going to I'm going to right click and say add fill layer, and then I'm going to drag that texture that we brought in into grayscale of that fill layer, and you'll see that it went everywhere. That is because it's using UV projection, and UV projection is taking this texture and projecting it on all over our UVs by just let's go to our UVs. This is projecting that whole texture over, and since this is not a perfectly square texture, it's squeezing it to fit it. So that's why that's like that. So I'm going to go back to 3D, but there are other ones in here, other projections. So I can change this to triplanar, and triplanar will look at it from X, Y, and Z and project it on your model. So it's projecting from the left, the front, and the back, and projecting it on your object. This is really nice if you have bad UVs, or like something. It's useful for a lot of reasons, but it can be a way to get around like bad UVs, that kind of thing, or like a really distorted kind of model that's hard to UV. And has a lot of like seams and stuff. This will project over those seams. And then over here we can do planar, and then there's warp. So planar and warp are very similar, except for warp gives you the option to distort your image that you're projecting on. So, but I'm just going to use Planar. And you can move this around same way as Maya by hitting WER, and you can move it around and rotate it and scale it and place it that way. You can also go up here, click on that, and this will snap to your face of your object. I'm going to snap it to the top, and then I'm going to scale it so it's not elongated, something like this. So, and then I'm going to scale it down, something like this, bring it down even further, like this, and it's obviously wrong, so I need to invert it. So I'm going to go right click over it and say add levels and say invert. Now I have this, and it's a little hard to see, so sometimes I'll crank this up. Maybe my opacity wasn't really needed, and then crank up the color just so I can figure out the placement, and then I'll dial it down to be more subtle after I figure out the placement. That's totally fine. And back to the fill, and then figuring out how this is. I'm gonna get generally where I want some stains to be, and then I'll paint out areas. Okay, so that's fine. So now I'm going to use another paint layer, add a paint layer, and I'm going to use the polygon fill, and just paint out those whole areas. And, oh, got to invert that. So I know I don't want those here, and that's fine. And then it's kind of cool that it's going through. Kind of looks like a water on certain areas like that. It's kind of neat. So I might keep those, and then I'll just paint out the areas I don't like. So I'll just make another paint layer and use I'm going to be pretty intentional about this. I'm going to go over and clear the search, and I'm going to use one of these natural looking dirt brushes, probably that maybe, and then hit X and just paint out these areas where they're repeating. Obviously this is too much. I usually don't. It's like intentionally putting on these stains. It's repeating, so get rid of the repeating, and then just add it in the areas that make sense. Alright, go back to here. So that's too much, obviously, like that. So it's just subtle enough in areas that I like. And then from here, I can even paint it in areas where maybe I went too far, so I can just go back. And I need to use the eraser for this part, so I need to erase my paint. Maybe I like it a little bit there, right there. So you're going back and forth. Oops. Now it's too much, so there we go. So now I'm getting a nice kind of effect. And usually you want your details to pop out from the highlight, so that's not really popping. So I'm gonna go back to my material and change the roughness so you kind of see it more. So maybe it's a little shinier than everything else. Or I can have it all the way, but then it kind of disappears. So I think shinier might be better. Cool. So that's how I would add those kind of details. It's probably too much. I'm going to dial down a bit so it's more subtle. There we go. Cool. I'll see you in the next video.